Hi guys, how are you? I hope everything is well, and I am ready so that we can talk in three, two, about tattoo. A little bit about tattoo. Yes, I am still in the house. I don't leave until Saturday to go tattoo. So every live until I have to go tattoo will actually be in the house in my closet. And every live that I'm not in the house, that I'm actually in the studio, is when you'll see studio background. So um, I've ordered what is that thing called? A ring light for here, so that way you can actually see my full face eventually. You can see my full face eventually, and not just half of it. I'm not trying to live like a Harvey Dent life or anything like that. Half shadow. Um, but there is that. Um, Today, I just wanted to talk to you about my first tattoo. Actually, I just got off of a call with friends in Japan, just hanging out, staying connected and stuff. And we're working on a project, but one of the things that we were talking about was our first tattoos and what that experience looked like and all that good stuff. So, um, as a tattoo artist, a lot of times we don't talk about our first tattoo journey. So I thought that that would be something cool to share with you. I blogged about it, so I'm just going to kind of, share from the blog in terms of what that's looked like for me with my first tattoo. Um, I consider my first tattoo to be what's the word I'm looking for? To be a rite of passage. If you don't know what a rite of passage looks like or what that what that actually feels like in terms of a rite of passage, there are three stages to a rite of passage. There's uh, there's preliminal, there's liminal, and there's postliminal, which is pretty much um, which is pretty much uh, identifying and becoming inducted, um, going through the process, and then being reintroduced back into society and all that good stuff. And I'll leave the blog link. Actually, let me just go ahead and put the blog link so you all have it. Um, Voila. Um, so that you have it in case you want to know about um, my first tattoo with pictures and all that good stuff. But a lot of times I'm asked about my first tattoo and why I got my first tattoo and all of that good stuff. So I got my first tattoo because I am a self harmer. I had gone off to college, and when I left for college, I was a straight A student, a mostly A's, a few B's type of student. So high GPA. College was very much a time that changed me. Um, I was far away from home. It was my first time away from home. I didn't know how to navigate and negotiate a lot of things, and I started to implode because I started to hold on to things. And after a while, I started finding relief in cutting. In finding relief in cutting, I would cut where it would be hidden, not for not because I was ashamed of it. I just didn't want to explain what was happening to my mom, and I think part of it was that I didn't really understand a lot of what was happening at that time. More than I just know I had this feeling, and I needed to release some angst, some tension, some whatever the fuck was actually in me. So there was a time. There was a time when I was in the cafeteria and friends started talking about getting tattooed, and I was like, oh my god, I should look at getting tattooed. And I had this journal. I have a journal where I would always doodle from literally from elementary school, and I would doodle the number 69. I'm OCD. We talked a lot about what qualifies me to talk tattoo therapy, and I don't know if I gave you my entire list, but I am OCD, um, and with that I like balance. I like things to be even. But I also have a thing for asymmetry. There's a high appreciation for asymmetry there. I think it's possibly I live by one of the quotes that equal does not mean identical. Things like that. So while I want it equal, it doesn't necessarily have to be identical. And the number 69 is something that that I'd always doodle because you could make mandalas. You could I don't know, just make it, it just had a nice asymmetrical flow to it. Just like the letter A, so, or V's, things like that. Um, so I decided that I would dig through one of my journals and get one of these doodles to actually get tattooed. So I kept a journal, obviously, and I've been doodling since like elementary school. So I decided that since I was going to go get a tattoo, I wasn't sure what I wanted to get tattooed. I didn't want, I'd never been to a tattoo shop actually, and no, I take that back. I'm lying. I've been to a tattoo shop. I got my first body mod at 18, which was my tongue piercing. But I was never keen on like the flash and stuff, and I didn't want to stay in there and like look through stuff. Like I wanted a private moment to figure out what I wanted to get tattooed. So I decided that I would just get something from one of my journals. It's stuff that I know. It's from me. It makes sense. It literally is of me. All this good stuff. Um, so I decided that I would rather a tattoo instead. So I decided that instead of, the next time I felt like cutting, instead of cutting, I would actually go get my first tattoo. It was a particular time where I couldn't come home. I went to school in Atlanta. I went to Clark, Atlanta, and I couldn't come home. And I went all the way. I went over to West End Tattoo. It was during Thanksgiving. Me and my homeboy Quallen went with me, and I decided that that was the time I was going to go get tattooed. I remember being um, wanting to cut and being full of angst because everybody was gone, and I could not go home. I stayed homesick, so I was coming home like almost a few times in a quarter. So I was definitely going back and forth, but it would literally be just to ground myself, and then I can go back and do what I needed to do, and all that good stuff. So with that, it was one of those things that was really really difficult to do. So me and Quallen, we took a field trip and we went to West End Tattoo. This would be the preliminal, where we walked to West End Tattoo, and I met the artist Red. He was incredibly patient with me, and he allowed me to be scared, and just kind of like twiddle my fingers and sweat and stuff while he set up. He wasn't overbearing. He was very very gentle in terms of just greeting me. It wasn't like I was going to a biker shop and they were like, "Hey honey, what do you want?" It was real cool. It felt like I was actually going to the corner store, but it wasn't snacks I was getting. I was I was getting a tattoo. And if you are in tune with like I'd say, I guess, more like hood culture. Anything like that. Going to a bodega, having a corner store in your neighborhood, and the people know you, and it feels like Cheers, where everybody knows your name, type of deal. That's what going into West End felt like. I didn't feel like I was going into a strange place. And getting something new done. I felt like I was actually going to go see the homies. I was picking up snacks, and all that good stuff. So it didn't they were while the idea of getting tattooed felt new, the space, the environment, the people around me did not feel new at all, and that was huge actually. So he took my design. and connected me to the meaning of it because it was a heart with a 69 in it. It is a heart with a 69 in it. I still got it tattooed. At that time, I was also a virgin, so I didn't know what a 69 was. Um, and, I told him why I wanted it, and he respected that. He didn't try and talk me out of it, but what he did do was he flipped it so that I would still have my tattoo, but it would read more of like a 96 than a 69, which was actually a little bit better and a little bit more relatable because that's the year my brother passed. My brother Scotty is the first idea of a best friend for me. And he's my oldest brothers. I have three older brothers. I'm the youngest and the only girl. That me. Um, so he was my first version, and he is the template for what a best friend is for me. So the fact that he died in '96, he flipped it and it read '96. I was like, all right, cool, no problem. It's on my lower back though, so it's still odd that something that I could say is for my brother is on my lower back, but my placement is because I didn't want to look at it, but I wanted some place where I could reach easy. Um, in case I needed to just kind of reconnect myself with that journey and letting myself know it's going to be okay. Um, I wanted it someplace that was still kind of hidden from my parents at that time. It was the '90s or early 2000s. So yeah, no, it was late '90s, early 2000s. So I like to wear like a lot of off-shoulder stuff. So having something that was in this particular area was not that was not the move at that time because I wasn't sure how my parents would take my first tattoo. So I decided my lower back, especially since I did stuff like I like to like be sassy and wear my hands on my hip or put my hands on my hip. And I was always told when you're young, you don't put your hands on your imagination. So I used to always like to put my hands on my hip. So I decided that my lower back was the center of me putting my hands on my hip. And that would be where I would get the tattoo. So that's how we came up with that's how I came up with the lower back. So there's that, and yes, depending on what's going on, I still like to post my lower back tattoo, my lower tramp stamp. That's what they're called. Lower back tattoos are traditionally called tramp stamps, but that's for a whole other conversation. So the preliminal part of the tattoo was literally going for an introduction and going into West End tattoo. Actually meeting with my tattoo, with the tattoo, what's the word I'm trying to say? With a tattoo artist, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go forth and do this thing, and how do we start the process?" That was my liminal, or my preliminal. My liminal is the actual tattoo experience, where he worked with me, he did everything, and all that good stuff, and I remember at this time when we're about to actually do the tattoo, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. It's gonna hurt, all this good stuff. And what ended up happening was, Reds was he was extremely patient and kind with me, um, and he said, "I'm not going to make you get this tattoo, but please know you don't get your money back." And those were the words that literally made me say, "All right, let's do it." Was literally I had already paid my little $50 for the tattoo. Actually, it was 60. I'm sorry. I paid the little $60 for my tattoo, and I wasn't getting the $60 back. I was a broke college student, and I saved for my tattoo. So since I saved for my tattoo and I needed to walk away with something, oh, we getting this tattoo. So you said I don't get my money back? I got you. Side note, there are no refunds in tattoos. So most of the time, unless your artist did something that was, that caused you some grave inconvenience, that they could have possibly controlled, in terms of like scheduling, things like that, that's usually when you get a refund. Other than that, life happening for any reason, you not wanting to get tattooed for any reason and changing your mind, um, not liking how the design came out. There are so many things that people want a refund for in tattoo, and it is one of the one things that I honestly think you should never get a refund for ever. I don't do them. And one of my first greetings to no refunds policy would be when I got my first tattoo. So I don't do refunds. Most tattoo artists don't do refunds, um, or anything like that. But there's that. So he told me I wouldn't get my refund. They did bring out a teddy bear. Um, and was like, here, you can hold on to this. And I was like, all right, cool. So I had to straddle the chair. So I had to pretty much, if this is a chair, like literally turn it back, and I had to straddle the chair. So I'm sitting like this. And it was a regular chair, so it's not like, like it was as high as this chair or anything like that. But but as I was straddling, I remember holding on to the bear. I don't know how the tattoo felt, if it hurt or anything like that. I do know by the time we finished, this bear um, didn't have an ear. And what's funny is my tattoo master says that when I get tattooed, I hum old Negro spirituals. I can neither confirm or deny this, but yeah, I was able to get through the process. It was cool. And when I came out of it, I had a great tattoo. I had a great lesson, in terms of tattoo placement, what the tattoo says about me. Um, Even though, it's my body, and I get the whole autonomy, and your body isn't for other people's consumption. But also remember, I have this message that tattoo is more than a tattoo. It is in fact a rite of passage, and in that, with tattooing, that what is believed within you is what should be engraved in your skin. So to know that, one, I was a virgin at the time. I didn't even know what a 69 was, and to have a 69 on my person, and not be connected with that particular part of life, or at least what it means. And it's on my lower back. Let's just put all of this into perspective. This is first tattoo is a 69 and a heart. It's on my lower back. I'm a virgin. Like all of these things, like nothing about that particular tattoo, other than the things that are specific to me, are things that people would actually pick up on. So people aren't going to pick up on, oh, she's been doing this, since she was in elementary school, and she's OCD, and like people aren't going to pick up on that part. But that's my part of the journey with what I chose to get tattooed. So while it's not for public consumption, and that was definitely for me and for me alone, at the same time, I do have to respect the fact, that once you put something outward, and people can possibly see it, that there is something that you're saying to people. Um, and I didn't want that to be what I was saying. So I'm very thankful for the quick lesson that he gave me. The fact that he took time to actually say, you might not be trying to say this, so let me help you navigate, and let's figure out, something that could be a little bit kinder, without taking it too far off the beaten path or anything like that. So I was really thankful for that. Um, and I loved it. I had a great session. Um, and then would come post-liminal, which would be afterwards. So being reintroduced to the world. I'm a cool kid, as I call it. So once you get tattooed, I'm always like, you join the cool kids club, after the first tattoo. And after the first tattoo, like I said, I don't remember much in terms of pain or anything like that. I do remember being extremely grateful. I remember being extremely relieved, and I remember wanting to tip Reds, but I'm a broke college student, so I want to tip them because I want to say thank you, and not just thank you with the words out of my mouth. I wanted to show him my appreciation, but I don't have any money to show him my appreciation. And yes, there is custom that you should tip your tattoo artist. People ask about this all the time. We'll have that as another discussion at some point. I'm going to write it down. But you should definitely tip your tattoo artist. It's a service, so if you enjoyed the service, if you enjoyed the person, if you enjoyed the outcome, you should definitely tip for such things. But again, another conversation. Um, Hold on, I'm writing it down right now because I'll forget. Tipping your tattoo. Should you tip your tattoo? So I wanted to tip him. No money. What do? Me and Colin were about to go to Wendy's for Frosties because it was hot. Um, it was Atlanta, so it was still kind of kind of warm down there. Not kind of. It was warm down there. So we decided that we would go for Frosties afterwards, and that was going to be our little celebration for me getting my first tattoo. Um, and just spending time with a good friend, just hanging out and all that good stuff. We were both from DC, and we both neither one of us could go home, and we're both like geeks and socially awkward and didn't want to do much partying or anything like that for stuff that was happening around campus for people who did stay in the area. So we decided that after the tattoo, instead of rushing back to the dorms just to sit in our separate dorms type of deal, we would actually just go hang out. We went to West End Mall, and we went for Frosties. And what I decided was I had enough to get two Frosties, so I decided to get Reds of Frosty because what we would have to do was the walk. We would have to walk down to down to Frostyville, down to Wendy's to come back up past the tattoo shop to go to West End Mall. So I decided it would be brilliant to share my thanks by offering a Frosty, offering chocolate. Um, so that's what I did. One of my love languages is to be helpful, so to be of service. And I knew that he wasn't leaving anytime soon. Rez was also high that day. Um, so with him being high and stuff, I was just like, yeah, munchies. And I would want something chocolatey. So I was just like, munchies, and it's warm outside. I'll get him a frosty too. So I got him a frosty, and what do you know? He loved that shit. He was really, really happy, and I was happy that he was happy. But pretty much, just to recap, um, the prelim, or yeah, my my prelim would have been considering getting tattooed. That mindset shift from cutting to actually getting tattooed. Um, and then and going into the shop to actually inquire about said service. How do I start this process and starting the process? The liminal would be the actual process and actually getting tattooed. The post lim is finishing, being able to walk out of the shop, reintroduced, but not as the same Imani, because not only have I had a mindset shift, but now my person literally does not look the same because I've marked it forever. Um, so with that, it's one of those things. Those are three steps. That was my rite of passage. And what I did not know is while that was a rite of passage for me in terms of my mindset shift, it was also technically a rite of passage into tattoo culture, into tattoo land, into um, into a practice that is actually more than just getting tattooed. So that's also why I have my message, because not only do I have a package of things that I sift through and just try to do better on a very regular basis, but I also had a very very empowering tattoo experience for my first one. Though short, it was still very very impactful. A lot of the things that happened, even in that first instance, are things that are embedded into my practice now, including slowing down and educating customers on stuff. So that my first tattoo. Um, so yeah, so that's pretty much it. Um, Tomorrow I will introduce you to my my top five. inspirations in tattoo. I don't look at very many people, but the people who I do look at are people who mean the most to me. So I'll be sure to make sure that all of that stuff is there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Johnny.